I have these friends, Dan and Sheila. They're podcast hosts.
Welcome to Profiling Criminal Minds. I'm Dan.
And I'm Sheila.
And we finished watching Shooter, which, as a real bad third season. Oh my God.
We should tell them. After I watched the first, I first watched the first episode. Yeah. I watched a couple more, and I sent Daniel an email and said, you want to call me after you finish this, and I want you to watch the first episode and call me.
Yeah.
And so he did, and I said, so my question to you is, do you really want to watch the rest of the season?
Yeah, they made a real dumb move in that first episode.
Josh Stewart's dead, so what are we going to do now?
Yeah. I mean, the crazy part is, first off, it's amazing how clear it is that was, like, this stuff was supposed to happen in the final episode of season 2 that never got made for whatever reason. Because, hey, remember that whole plot of, his wife having shot a guy, deafening him? Remember that plot and her trying to give a rare gun from a war hero to him to settle all that, and Solotov seemed real pissed about it? You remember all that plot? Yeah, here's how that gets resolved. Like 3 episodes in, the lawyer is like, oh yeah, remember that guy who was suing you for the way you shot his ear off? Yeah, he tried to cross state lines carrying the unregistered gun you gave him. And so, he's going to be in too much legal trouble to bother suing you. And I'm like...
He gave me back the gun.
And he also gave me back the gun. I'm like, but how does he have the gun if he got charged with transporting it across state lines illegally? I feel like that gun should be government property. So yeah, I think clearly Solotov was supposed to shoot that guy, and then a complication in the original version of season 3 was, Bob Lee was going to get blamed for shooting him. That's my suspicion of what was originally supposed to happen there. Because this is your wrap up of the wife's entire storyline of season 2.
Well, yeah, look how it ended in season 3.
Oh my God! All right. Yeah, it's a very funny thing watching this show, because Solotov brings him out. To where he used to camp with his dad. He brings Solotov out there, and again, Solotov, God, seems like a pretty reasonable guy, honestly. He really does. Like, he's just like, he's not killing everybody he sees. When he has to run a blockade from the cops, it's not like he's going out of his way to shoot them. In fact, he's trying to destroy the cars so they can't give chase. Like, then
that's all.
Bob Lee tells him not to shoot a guy when they're hijacking his car, so he doesn't. Like, how is it Isaac and not this guy who's the character we're supposed to keep wanting to follow?
I have no idea.
Yeah, they never succeed in selling us Isaac as a character we're supposed to be invested in. They try, they just never succeed.
No, it never succeeded, and when they decide that they're just going to let the past be the past and forget it and start anew.
Yeah.
And I'm just sort of like, okay. This was so some of this was so tedious. Some of it was we did figure out what happened to the money. Okay, yeah. That's nice. I'm real glad that Omar Epps and the FBI agent now have set up their own security. Memphis has set up their own security business.
Back to murdering people for the government.
That's what it looks like.
We'll talk about that when we get there, but it's just like, the reason after I started watching, because I there's a couple of times during this season that I kind of want to just nope out and say, no, let's not talk about this show anymore. But by the time I kept going, because I'm like, I wanted to see what their point of view on all of this Black Ops stuff was. And I think their point of view is, well, as long as the right people are doing it, it's fine.
That has to be the answer.
This
That's
is literally
all
the
with
end of the
end
show.
scene?
Is the president's deputy chief of staff is like, we'd like you to murder the head of
This
the
German
German
guy.
political opposition. And I'm like, I mean, yeah, I'm not okay with there being German Nazis coming back. But it's like that the show is so blasé about the fact that, okay, well, you're going to have to use your Atlas people to murder, you know, the guy who's trying to run against Angela Merkel and turn Germany right wing.
You know, and then you get, well, no, that's that one. I mean, there were two things that ended it. And then you see Bob Lee shooting Gerald McRaney.
Which we're fine
So-
with, you know, no problem
Well,
with that.
I'm not saying that, but it is part of the system.
It is.
It is just, you wanted to know what their feeling was about black ops and about justified vigilante justice. That's it.
Yeah. And it's like, that's, as long as the right people are doing it, it's fine.
Yeah.
Now you compare that to the show Angel, which, by the way, perfect show, the show Angel, where season 5, they get put in charge of the evil law firm, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, well, now that we have all this power, we can do good. But the problem is, the system demands that you have to keep a law firm running. You have to keep all... The only way to use power is to have power and keep power. But, you know, there's no way to morally get that power. Like, the show's got a really clear message that, you know what, it's the system that's the problem. It doesn't matter who's running the system. The fact that there is this system is the problem. Yep. And, like, we're supposed to see it as a win that they're in charge of Atlas now. But, like...
No.
The problem was that Atlas existed. Like, that was the problem. The problem was that there were these crazy guys murdering people for U.S. global hegemony. Like, the fact that, you know, oh my God, that Arlo Givens and Gerald McRaney were the ones running it wasn't the problem with Atlas.
Nope.
Oh God, yeah, and that's I guess my biggest issue with the show is it's like it never blames the system.
No, it turns out that once Bob Lee and Omar Epps decide to forgive and forget.
Yeah, I guess that's that.
You know, and then in Memphis and Omar Epps decide that they're going to take over Atlas and just do good.
Yeah. That's really, I had a big problem with that ending. And I think you've stated why, is that like, it's so insane that this is the conclusion they come to. Although
the whole
I will say
thing was just,
I will say something that's kind of freaked me out.
mm-hmm.
Is the future seeing power of the show Shooter coming back again, which is that the main plot of the villains this time is to murder Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Seems to.
Yeah. And Rhea Perlman showing up to play Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Like, oh, that's fun. I was so surprised to see her.
Yeah.
But it's
the
like...
The whole plot was to kill her.
Yeah, the whole plot was to kill her so they could get another Republican on the court and who would...
No. They didn't need to get another Republican on the court once she was dead.
Oh, you're right.
Because then it would be 4-3 and yes. All of the horrible things that Atlas did would not come out.
Exactly. But I mean, they would get, you're right. They would still get, the president's pretty clearly a Republican, and they would still get a Republican on the court if she died. But the important part was they didn't accidentally, you're right, get a Republican who might care about disclosure of government secrets. And I'm like, man, you never met a Republican, did you? Like a Republican Supreme Court justice? No, they're fine with the government doing whatever it wants if a Republican is in power. And then they want the government to not be able to do anything if a Democrat is in power, because they are partisan goons. And they don't have principles.
Can't imagine what your politics is like.
Well, no. Is it political to acknowledge that the Supreme Court is nakedly partisan? And they're not even subtle about it? Alito had a Stop the Steal flag on his... Yes. On his house while, the January 20th, the January 6th aftermath and the emergency court cases were happening. Yeah, no, they're nakedly political and they don't even try to hide it.
Yep.
It was a show about the threat of, Republicans.
Well, this explains how it happened.
Well, yes, exactly. Republicans taking over the court. And then that's exactly what happened. Republicans took over the court. And now they're in the process of dismantling America.
Yep.
But because, we don't have some sort of a Bob Lee to deal with the situation.
They may be destroying it.
Well, they're doing their best to destroy America.
Yes. We may have 3 countries out of this.
Yes. Who can say, right? Oh my God. Yeah, it's a disaster down there. But anyway, we're not here to talk about America crumbling. We are right now, as we record this. I mean, I know you're listening to this in August or September, but as we're recording this, yesterday, the Donald Trump trial, the defense rested without putting on a defense. And now we're just waiting on closing arguments. And so, yeah, by the next time we record one of these, we're probably going to know that Donald Trump has been convicted of a felony and it's not going to matter. He's still going to be, a third of America's choice to be president of the United States, a scumbag criminal. Just,
what the hell? Why not?
America's collapsing. It's like you try to laugh, but it's too sad sometimes.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to Shooter, which for all of its stuff is not an overtly political show. It is just passively political in the fact that it has this libertarian solve it all yourself mindset.
Yes.
That like, as long as the good people have the power, like it's in favor of power and hierarchy and violence, as long as the right people use it, as if there isn't something entirely negative and exclusively obviously negative about hierarchy and using violence to keep the hierarchy going. And that's what makes us leftists, because we're like, hey, maybe there's no justification for these guys having power over people.
Oh, it is such a disaster.
It really is.
I mean, you watch this show and okay. Yeah, I guess. Like, I don't know what to say. I mean, it was really hard. Sometimes I had to go through it.
Yeah.
It was, I just whipped through parts of it. Because you just could. Well, okay, so we've got another fight scene. Okay, that's going to take up 2.5 minutes. So I'll move my counter 2.5 minutes. Sure enough, the fight scene is just ending, and then something else happens. Then there's another chase scene or a fight scene or something, and the storyline, and the wife going off, and then she's being followed because X. I just.
You have to check out. The thing is, the first season, 10 episodes, felt bloated. Second season, 8 episodes, and honestly, felt a little too short. But that's because, they had some bloat in the early episodes, and they didn't manage their time well, and they forgot to make the last episode. Right? Third season, their longest season by far, and it is so padded. Oh my God, this season of television is so padded.
Haven't seen a padded season like this in a long
I mean, it's like the worst seasons of 24 when they go off on these side quests. You're like, oh my God, what is happening here? Why are we following these characters? What is this threat? Why is Callum Rennie here? I don't understand any of this. Right?
It doesn't make any sense.
A lot of Canadian actors on that show. People don't talk about it much, but a huge number of Canadian actors on 24.
Well,
I guess Kiefer Sutherland, looking out
has
for
the power.
Yeah, he has the power to bring in all these Canadian actors he knows.
Yep. So he does.
Forever Knight. Nick Knight was on the show one season. Weird. Colm Fiore. But anyway, the point that's so funny, though, is you're watching this and I'm like, when you find out what their plan is to get their own guy on the Supreme Court to stop Atlas's stuff from coming out.
Yep.
Right? My question is, and this is the entire Red Barra, Gerald McCraney storyline, why do they care at all? Like, in the least? About Bob Lee's plan to find out what their connection was to his father's death. They're like, they're going to file a lawsuit Okay, so in 3 years we'll have to buy a judge?
Yeah.
Who cares?
How much money do you guys have? Billions of dollars?
Wait, do you think that a Texas cattle billionaire, right? A Texas cattle billionaire has anything to fear from the courts in Texas? Like, on what planet is this a threat to them? Oh, well, Bob Lee's adopted father, the lawyer, is going to file a lawsuit of wrongful death against the cattle processing company that a guy worked for who may have been involved in Bob Lee's dad's death, even though no one has any evidence whatsoever that any of that happened.
And even after they found his father's tape, confessing to all of this,
to his involvement in Atlas, right? But it's like they don't find that out. They don't even know to look for that until Red Jr. tells them it's out there.
I know.
These guys are like, I don't understand why they're making such a fuss about this. This is not worth their time. They're working on such a larger scale of stuff that, like, the whole first half of the season, I don't know what the villains are doing at all. They can just ignore Bob Lee and his family and his lawyer, because they are trying to, like, actually, the weird part is, even when they were just going to get the guy, there's intimations that even when they were going to get the guy in the Supreme Court, and it looked like he was going to get on the Supreme Court, they were still going to, right? They were still going to do a terrorist attack? And I'm not clear why.
Yeah.
Well, they'll do a terrorist attack and they'll take away everybody's civil rights. Well, okay, but why?
You've solved all your problems by getting this Abbott guy on the Supreme Court.
Yeah. By having this Abbott guy in the Supreme Court, you've already solved all of your problems. Also, I mean, this is a side thing. Why did Harry Hamlin have the codes for all of the escape routes for the Supreme Court and the president just sitting in his safe? He's not the one who's going to be using that to kill people. It's like it's only in his safe so that the heroes can have something that Atlas wants. There's no narrative reason for this character to have that, because he's not the one in charge of organizing the murder of whoever when the attack happens. You know?
Yep.
That part of it just makes no sense to me. Oh, God.
I'm sort of sitting here and going, why are we talking about this?
I know.
Like,
I mean, this season is such a mess. Like, right in the first episode, so they assume that Solotov is going to get his money, right? Getting the ledger back. And they're trying to make it seem like this is going to be a bad thing. And I'm like, I don't care if Solotov gets his money. That's fine. Who cares? Like, go for it, buddy. Right? Because the other characters are like, and this is an actual quote, if Solotov gets the banking info, world events will go from bad to worse. To which I say, how?
Well, yes, and it didn't make any sense that Bob Lee, once he seemed to understand, I mean, once Solotov is explaining things to him, and considering that Solotov wants to destroy Atlas, which supposedly is what Bob Lee and Omar Epps want to do.
Again, why are they fighting?
Why can't they team up?
I know.
Why does Bob Lee just literally murder Solotov for no reason? Ultimately.
He murders. Oh, well, he wants to get vengeance for his buddies. Yeah, Solotov just pulled the trigger. Atlas is the one who wanted all your buddies killed to cover up their heroin smuggling. Again, Solotov went out of his way to let you live on multiple occasions.
Yes. I mean, it's like you're going to forgive Omar Epps, but you're not going to forgive Solotov. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, my God.
And what Omar Epps did to you was even worse.
It's so much worse.
Than anything else that was done.
Oh, my God. And then like the head of the the National Security Advisor, right? Yeah. The National Security Advisor has the most bizarre, I mean, it's not even an arc, like what her plan is this season that makes no sense. I mean, her plans never made sense, right?
No.
And, like, there is no point at which her plans made sense at all. But here, it's excessively bad because she's like, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell the good people of Atlas that I want back in. So I guess she was in Atlas this whole time, but working against them at the same time, like previously. It doesn't really make sense. But anyway, so I guess she was in Atlas this whole time, but that's not the point. The point is, Beverly D'Angelo is like, here, I will bring them what they want, the key card, and that way I can get a conversation with them. And like, she goes there, and then at the last minute, she passes the key card back to Harris because she knows they're planning to murder her. I'm like, well, then why do you go with Gerald McRaney if they're just planning to murder you? Why are you doing, like, if you had a sense that they weren't, like, what was ever your plan? You know?
Well, we don't know. I also don't know how the hell, given everything that happened, she had the ability to Semtech the entire complex.
Yeah, I don't know what any of that was.
When did she have the time to do that? When did she do that? You know.
I know, yeah. None of this made sense. They added a new character, right, to be the lady who used to work for.
Well, because Beverly D'Angelo
gets killed. Yeah, so they need someone else to be the person who worked there. And again, a character, Carlita, I think is her name. Anyway, but the point is, whatever her name is, who just never tracks, and we never get a good handle on who she is or what she wants. And she has her buddy from who used to be, right? Who used to be her buddy from Atlas back in the day, and he's the one who's going to blow up the place. And you're like, okay, I don't really understand why I'm supposed to be engaged with any of these characters. They don't manage to make it interesting. And then we're expected to believe that Atlas has been controlling all world events through, this, but since also at the same time, since the Vietnam War, but also Atlas is just 4 guys and like a dozen mercenaries. Like, literally, as far as I can tell, Atlas is the judge, Arlo Givens, Red, and Harry Hamlin. I think that's the entirety. Oh, no, wait, sorry, 5 guys. Actually, no, the judge doesn't even seem to be leadership. He just seems to work for them. So swab out the judge for the president's chief of staff. Yeah. And you're like, I think Atlas is just 4 guys, who
this
smuggled.
This is supposed to be, I thought it was an international cabal. That was the impression you got in the second season.
Yes, they go out of their way to make that clear. They're like going to Chechnya and recruiting. They're going to Chechnya and recruiting Solotov, and they have this whole organization of drug traffickers in Afghanistan, and they control huge sections of the CIA. But apparently, no, it's just 4 guys.
Having fun.
Another line I just wanted to call out as being egregious. This is real bad, right?
Yes. Okay.
So Omar Epps says, as if it's trivia, the South fired the first shot in the Civil War. I'm like, I think everybody knows that, Isaac. Does anybody not know that? That the South started the Civil War? Right?
Except maybe people in the South.
Maybe people in the South, right? They started the Civil War. They attacked Fort Sumter. They had been seized all of the federal armories, which is attacking the United States government. Mm-hmm. They started it, guys, when they seized the armories and attacked Fort Sumter. But anyway, because well, what about the raid on Harper's Ferry? Not an official U.S. government act. Just a bunch of hillbillies with guns who were on the right side of history, guys. Not the act of the government. But anyway, the point is, the line that follows is, you think you're fighting for one thing, turns out to be another. What is that supposed to mean? What do you imagine the people in the South thought they were fighting for? Because according to them, they were fighting for the continuation of slavery. They were real open about that. They put it in all their paperwork. You know how they had all that paperwork to announce they were a country now? They said it was to keep slavery going. Like, this isn't a mystery, guys. I honestly know, like, what did the writer think they were saying when they wrote the line, think you're fighting for one thing, turns out you're fighting for another?
I have no idea.
When they wrote that line about the Civil War.
I know. It's not like I don't know what they're writing about. I just don't understand
what they thought they meant.
Yes. And I just keep going, okay, so already the problems in the South and their education system are pretty clear. I'm assuming this is a Southern made show. I can't imagine it coming out of the North. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Northern Michigan, it might have been.
Okay, that's true. Maybe Indiana, Midwest.
Yeah. Yeah, and we did end up in Canada at the end. So
that's true.
It could have come out of Wyoming or something. I don't know.
The South is not a geographical location. It's a state of mind. That's what you have to remember. But anyway, another moment that I just found so baffling that I wanted to specifically talk about this moment is, so they kidnapped the guy who's going to be on the Supreme Court. And first off, there's this hilarious scene where they use their money to buy out all of the seats to his wounded warriors thing so they can try to blackmail. And I'm like, but they do that on the day it's supposed to happen? So all of the tickets for the event, every single ticket for the event of this fundraiser for Wounded Warriors was still on sale the morning of the event. If they hadn't bought all of the tickets, nobody was going to show up.
Anyway.
Like, you don't understand how these fundraisers work, do you? People work on selling this stuff out for weeks or even months. You don't show up and find out if people have bought tickets to your thing. You have to rent a hall. There's money involved. Or maybe they donate the hall, but still, there's paperwork. Anyway.
It's not.
I don't know, but anyway. It's a very stupid scene. But then it's
a very stupid show.
Bob Lee finds out that this is the guy who shot his dad. Realistically, Red should have been the one who shot his dad from a narrative standpoint. But they can't have Red be the one who shot his dad for reasons that I'm going to get into later. But everything about this narrative, right, suggests that Red should be the one who shot his dad.
Yeah, Daryl,
Every single thing about the show. Gerald McCraney, yes. Gerald McCraney, Red. Everything about every part of the narrative, it needs to be Red that shot his dad for reasons I'll go into in a minute.
Yeah.
But right down to the fact that he says, I took care of the Bob Swagger situation, and that is how I got my way into Atlas.
Yeah.
He even says that. Well, if you didn't pull the trigger...
Not the Bob Swagger, the Earl Swagger.
Earl Swagger. I say Bob Swagger, sorry. Anyway, the Earl Swagger situation, right? And that's how I got into Atlas. But then you find out that he was just shot by Atlas's Special Forces guy, who then they gave him a judgeship. What was Red's involvement then? It seems like he had no involvement in any... Oh, well, Red was involved because he's the one who broke the guy out of jail to who Bob had been having an affair. Errol had been having an affair with, right? He gave a job to that guy because he was going to then set up that guy for being the one who murdered. Okay, but, fundamentally, it's not that hard to kill Earl Swagger. He's a sheriff in Texas. You can just have somebody shoot him with a gun at a traffic stop. Like, you're going to so much trouble.
Well, they had to fill up time,
But my point is, narratively, Red has to be the one who pulls that trigger.
Yeah, of course it is.
Of course it is. I mean, just everything about it says narratively, he has to be the one to pull that trigger. But anyway, So Bob Lee has taken, because he's found out this is the guy who pulled the trigger on his dad, he's taken him out the woods to execute him along with Harris, right? Mm-hmm. And by the way, I'll say this, the season's real bad. I'm not going to defend really anything about this season. I found Harris mildly entertaining as a character because he was the one character in a position to say, you know, everything about this is crazy and makes no sense and we're definitely going to get killed. He was the one voice of reason. In the whole world. Because it's like Memphis has gone from, in the first 2 seasons, being someone who kind of believes in the system to, right, in the first episode, sign off on murdering Harry Hamlin. Just flat out murdering Harry Hamlin and stealing all of his money. Yes, this has been a big turn of you as a character.
Yes. Oh, I know. It just is. Yeah, and well, this is all just
all right. But the point
stupid writing.
It is bad writing. He has taken the out of the woods to murder him, and then the Atlas goons show up, right? Mm-hmm. And they manage to murder all the Atlas goons, and then the cops show up, right? And then Bob Lee says, right? Like, when they connect all of these dead mercenaries to you, it's going to destroy your whole life. You're never going to be on the Supreme Court now. And so the guy's like, guess I better shoot myself in the face. To which I respond, no, you were kidnapped by Bob Lee. I'm pretty sure all of the Atlas guys aren't like known criminals. Nope. Like all the logic just says, doesn't he just have to say, I was kidnapped by this guy who was accused of killing the president recently?
Yep.
A guy who like is, you know, a known vigilante murderer who thinks who's been yelling about how I killed his dad for some reason, right?
Yep.
And this is the, you know, private security people who were trying to save me from him, who he then murdered.
Okay, well, what I would say is that obviously these guys don't watch Fox.
I know, right?
Sorry.
Like, on what planet does this guy think he has to kill himself? There's no evidence. Even if they found out the name of all of these Atlas guys, they're just going to be represented as, like, private security professionals. There's no reason for him to kill himself. But it's like, they guess they don't want they're not ready for Bob Lee to murder a guy in cold blood, even though he already did that to Solotov?
We saw it.
We saw it. He already murdered a guy in cold blood. And by the way, I do love the only way he beats Solotov is Solotov falls and he hits his head on a rock that randomly happened to be there. Because no, even the writers aren't willing to say that Bob Lee could have beat Solotov in a fight. Well, Bob Lee had been shot. Yeah, and he had a broken wrist in his gun arm. You know, like, it was a fair fight and Solotov was going to win it. But anyway, enough of our love of Solotov, the character who got done dirtiest by the show.
Well, it would have made a lot more sense if he had connected up with Solotov and they had worked to bring down Atlas, because that's what it should have been. That's
what the show should have been.
Yeah.
And it's wasn't. Like, it wasn't. And it's like, you've got to have this guy out there who can do the stuff Bob's unwilling to do. And Bob has a genuine reason to be nervous about working with him because, you know, he literally shot Donnie. Yeah, because he was ordered to. And then you open up this question about, okay, well, how moral is the Special Forces stuff? And you realize, and how much more interesting is it if over the course of the season you're like, yeah, Solotov, not that different than my dad, or in fact me. We all just do shady stuff because we're ordered to for a higher cause.
Yep.
Like, they're keeping Solotov around.
That's what, like,
is what this show should have been about.
That's what the third season should have been about.
Yeah. So can we talk instead about how, and I'm not saying the show is monstrously sexist, but does the show seem to hate his wife?
Yep.
I think the show might hate his wife to a really like weird and problematic extent, because they have her like being so monstrously unreasonable. I'm like, you're literally right. You're literally being threatened by the deep state. Like,
Yeah.
who killed your father-in-law? I mean, you never met him, but still, your husband's beloved dad was murdered by the government, and now the government is actively trying to frame your husband and murder you, and you keep acting like the biggest problem here is your husband not being emotionally available.
Oh, and then that last line. Well, this is obviously these guys don't. I don't know. They don't even think about it. Okay, I mean, because at the end, I'm so sorry, Bob Lee, that I lost faith in us.
I know.
I couldn't shed a friggin' tear in this show.
How could you shed a tear?
Yeah, how could you shed a friggin' tear in this show?
No, it's absurd.
I mean, she dies, and it's supposed to be sad, and there's poor Bob Lee falling apart at the seams, and
you're like,
no, but
okay.
It was all her anyway.
But the show blames her because, and this is why, and the thing is, so this is why I'm going to get to the point, which is logically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Red has to be narratively the guy who actually pulled the trigger on his dad.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is, and then to justify, that, he has to, all you have to do is you have to have him flee, and the wife say, let it be over, right?
Yes.
But the thing is, letting it be over, because, he has lost all of his power and fled, not going to the ends of the earth to chase him down seems fine. But then Red, turns around and tries to kill Bob anyway, and his wife gets killed. But the thing is, and this is where I'm going to say the show is kind of horrific. I think it's not enough of his wife's fault. If she just says, he's on the run, let him run, right?
Yeah.
I think the show needed it to be more of his wife's fault. So his wife has to essentially badger Bob Lee into letting, not him being on the run, but to actively letting Red go. Yeah. Because that's what she does. And so Bob Lee lets him go and specifically tells him he can go as long as it's over. And he wouldn't have done that if his wife hadn't said it. And the problem is, if they want that scene to happen, Red can't have killed his father. Because if Red is specifically the one who pulled the trigger on his father, then there's no planet under which Bob says to Red, I'm letting you go. Like, that can't happen. No. And you can only blame the wife if she puts, you can only blame the wife for her own death, right? If she tells Bob Lee to let him go. But she never tells Bob Lee to let him go if he actually killed Bob Lee's dad. And so I think they changed who killed Bob Lee's dad specifically so the wife can be responsible for her own death, and Bob Lee isn't responsible for her death.
Yeah, Bob Lee is off the hook.
That's what I'm saying. And that's why I think the show is horrifically bad to his wife. A character I don't even like. It's not like I love the character of his wife. She's terrible too, okay? But the show really seems to have it in for her in a way I was not okay with.
Of course not.
Okay, good. I'm glad you're with me.
Why would you? Why? Like this, there is nothing to be okay with about the way
in this season of television.
This season of television works out. Like all of these people, I mean, I guess they act their parts well, but the whole thing is just a disaster.
It really is.
And then, I mean, what happened to the daughter?
Yeah. Just not on the show anymore.
No.
And then they reintroduced the sister because there's someone who's got to, adopt the daughter now that Bob Lee has turned into William Fichtner, to the point that he even uses William Fichtner's magic gun to assassinate Red at the end, and they go out of their way to show you that.
So, yes, but, it's not even but because they gave, but here's the difference, you see. But Bob Lee, unlike William Fichtner, had a real reason to continue to be an assassin. And so the question then is, in the 4th season, as we're following the newly remade Atlas, are they going to start hiring Bob Lee to be the assassin?
Well, that's absolutely what they're implying with that ending, I think.
Yep.
You know, that Bob Lee is just going to become, I mean, there was never a 4th season, thankfully. You know,
we would not have watched a 4th
No, I don't
season.
think we would have watched a 4th season. We only watched the 1st season because I knew Josh Stewart is in the 2nd season.
Yes.
I only watched the 3rd season because we thought they were going to be smart and know what they had with Josh Stewart.
Oh, it was so bad.
And apparently they didn't.
No.
It's very frustrating, this show.
Well, I mean, yeah, because you made us watch it.
Hey! You were happy to watch that 2nd season too.
Well,
and
sure,
no one can say Josh Stewart wasn't a delight in that 2nd season.
Okay, but I was willing to stop.
That's true. I know. But it's like, it's funny when you watch this because it's like Josh Stewart is still so good in the 1st episode. He's so entertaining, and you don't get anything close to that for the rest of the season.
Nope.
You don't get a villain with this kind of energy and screen presence. You know?
No, I mean, Gerald McRaney did his best.
He did his best, but he has to play a character who's just constantly yelling at people and not really having any clear plans and not getting anything done.
And hating his, and loving his son,
hating his terrible son. Oh, he doesn't love his son. He has a terrible son who he hates. Yeah. And it's like, and I love he constantly screws, his son constantly screws stuff up. And it's like, well, why do you keep giving him important jobs?
Why do you keep giving him jobs to do when you know he's going to screw it up?
Just let him work, let him run a meatpacking plant. That's fine. That's obviously within his skill set. You keep trying to bring him in on this supervillain stuff, and he screws it up. But you've got a whole army of supervillains you can have to do the supervillain stuff.
And Bob Lee would have never found out that his father had made a tape if it hadn't been for the son.
Gone and told the guys about the tape. This is my point. And the weird part is, there's a way to make this interesting, right? If you compare, all right, if you talk about how, because he has one line of him failing as a father, but it's like, maybe actually make it about that, right? Maybe, maybe make it about the fact that your son is this disaster who fails over and over again. And Bob Lee's son, Earl's son, is actually a capable man. And maybe you envy, right, him for actually having this son, and you resent Earl Lee more, right? Because your son is a disaster, but at least he left, a legacy behind that allowed his son to become a competent man. And why are you such a failure compared? Have Gerald McRaney reckon with that. But it's that's all. It's not even subtext. I don't even know if the writers noticed that was happening.
No, I don't think so. Not given everything we've seen so far. It's just impossible to even
it really
conceive of that,
Oh, it really is very frustrating.
Well, the whole show was it was at one point, I have been known to just say, no. This was, and it was so bad. And when they, how egregious to kill his wife.
I know. But
to give him a reason to become William Fichtner. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Cool.
But it's so frustrating when I watch it, right? Because I'm I know that someone listening to this could be yeah, well, you guys are the Josh Stewart podcast. Of course you're going to be mad at the show that killed off Josh Stewart. And I get that. I understand why you would think that and how you could say that. But no, the first show was not a very good season of television. The second show was a mediocre season of television with a fantastic performance at the heart of it. And the third season is just a complete mess. Yes. That, we're extra mad at them because they don't seem to understand what they had in the second season and massively exploit that in the third season.
Yeah. make an entirely different show. It's clear that the writers or whoever the showrunner was or whoever the creator of this was didn't really understand. And Wahlberg was still involved with it. So,
well, you never know how involved he actually was. He might have just
Yeah.
been cashing a check. But the funny part is, when I'm watching it, I just love how, like, the reporter who had been so central in season 2, like, gets killed off camera, and we only see a body, like, turned away, like, where he's been hanged by Atlas.
yeah.
Specifically so they don't have to pay the actor for one more day of work.
Yes, that's just an extra up
Yeah,
there.
just an extra up there, you know. I thought that was kind of mean. But yes, instead we have Harris there the whole season, who, like I said, is the one, you know, mildly entertaining portion of the show. The sleazy
Who then-
Washington
yes.
guy who's in way over his head.
Yes, who then becomes the chief of staff,
The new deputy chief of staff, yeah. I know. Josh from the West Wing.
Yes, it's just in case you're wondering the role.
The role. Yeah, whose girlfriend now runs Atlas and murders people for the president.
And doesn't tell Omar Epps.
Which is weird that she's not telling Omar Epps.
Why
It's like,
didn't she tell Omar
why isn't
Epps
she telling
what was
Omar
being-
Epps? Like, he knows what his job is, doesn't he? Like,
Well, here's the thing, is that I think that we are supposed to believe that she's not telling Omar Epps because she doesn't know whether she's really going to do it.
really? Does she not know what her job is? I mean, you might be right in reading it that way, but it's like,
no,
that's
I
a
think
weird
that
thing
that's
to
what
have
was
happen.
intended.
Yeah, she
I
doesn't
don't-
know if she's going to tell Omar Epps because she knows Omar Epps would just, you know,
Yeah, okay.
set stuff in motion to kill the guy.
But why would they want to kill a right-wing German whatever?
Because they're happy with the status quo, and he's a Nazi who's working with Al-Qaeda. See, the premise is that he's a Nazi who's working to make things so bad in Germany that Nazis will get to take over Germany, and they like stability.
Yes, that's right. Oh, yes, I forgot that line.
Yeah, they like things to be nice and stable. They like the neoliberal world order. And having Nazis take over Germany and start a bunch of wars, probably not the best for global stability and profit.
It's true.
Profit
being the key word here.
Yeah, profit being the key word here. I mean, the show doesn't say that this is all about capitalism, but, you know, this is all about capitalism, guys. This is all about keeping markets running.
Yeah.
In case you didn't know. And when we talk about the movie Shooter next week, because, yeah, we're not done.
Oh, God. I don't.
You're going to see that at least back when they were making the TV show, they understood that this is back when they were making the movie, they understood that this is all about money.
Yeah.
Right? And that is the one thing that this show is never willing to say. And by the way, here's a weird thing to miss, because, like, the people running the show didn't really understand their own plot or even have a good sense of what had happened already in the show. And you can say that they don't understand what they had just because Josh Stewart isn't the main character of the show now. But setting that aside, at the end of the show, Red hires a Mexican hit team, right? Yeah. Or South American hit team to murder Bob Lee. And my question is, why does he have to hire them? If this show understood its own continuity at all, wouldn't he just phone up the cartels and say, hey, remember how your banker was murdered and all your money was stolen? Here's the guy who did it and has the money.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't have to hire a guy to kill Bob Lee. People already want to kill Bob Lee for very good reasons, and the show has just forgotten about it.
So I don't know what the writing room was like, but maybe they brought in a whole bunch of new people.
Yeah,
because the people after the
didn't bother
season,
watching the second season.
Got better jobs someplace else.
Yeah, maybe. But I mean, one more time.
Poor Nasty.
Josh Stewart was so good in that second season. Yes. He really just enlivened. He livened things up every time he was on screen, and his character was just so good at driving the story. And again, the writers forgot and started treating him like he's the main character of the show. They honestly seem to be forgetting who we were supposed to be caring about. Because you didn't have the kind of energy in the Bob Lee and Isaac scenes that you had whenever Solotov was out there trying to pull one of his schemes or murdering people or getting close to Bob Lee's wife. Like,
yeah, that was
that's
so
where
good.
all the energy of the season was.
Yes, it was, because that was such a good. There were parts of the second season. Yeah, no, I mean, it really was good, and that should have gone somewhere, and it didn't.
I mean, just like having Solotov around, like seemingly being more interested in this wife and kid than Bob Lee is, because he's sad about how his family was murdered by the Russians.
Okay, here I have an idea.
Please.
That what we're talking about might have been in the mind of the showrunner, and originally in the second season, and then the showrunner got fired because the people who are producing or USA Network didn't like where this was going to go.
Or Ryan Phillippe didn't like the fact that he was being sidelined on his own show.
On his own show. So yeah, I mean, that's quite possible. And they fired the showrunner, and they fired a bunch of other people. Or
maybe even didn't fire them. Maybe just read them the riot act.
Yeah. And said, no, this is what we have to do.
Yeah. I mean, it's not impossible.
No.
Because it's like you watch that second season and it seems like they're really setting up interesting stuff.
Yeah.
With this character.
And Ryan Phillippe didn't want to share.
Maybe. Honestly, it's entirely possible. Like, I hadn't thought about that, but it's entirely possible that you're right.
Yep, I would think so.
Yeah,
when I think, because it's the only thing that because I still think, right, that that there had to be something else going on when they ended it at season 8, because that's what at episode 8, because they turned it into a cliffhanger. And I think that something else was, because it should have gone for 2 more episodes, and it's possible that, as you say, Ryan Phillippe did not like the way it was going, and it was his show. And for whatever reason, they were buying that it was his show.
Yeah.
And
maybe.
I don't know. I mean, I'm hypothesizing.
We can't say for sure. We have no information.
No.
Okay,
here.
No.
We're just rambling around.
But we're rambling around, and we're looking at the very real thing that it's like the whole last 2 episodes of season 8 are setting up something really clear that the show completely abandons.
Yes, they kill off Solotov
at the start of season 3.
And season 3. Let's not forget. It's 13 episodes long.
It's so much longer, and it's such a disaster.
Yeah. And it means that they did have, something had to have happened in the production room, in the USA, because USA Network is in control of it ultimately. And they're not all that much better than Fox.
It's not crazy to suggest that they were told to change direction in the next season.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a crazy thing to think. It's frustrating.
There is one thing I could say, but I am not going to say it.
Okay.
I'll say it off camera.
We'll say it off mic. Okay. One thing I will say, though, is,
nasty.
You know what the funniest part is, when we were just talking about season 2 and how much, it's like how the Bob Lee and Isaac stuff wasn't that compelling and how great it was to constantly be watching Solotov.
Yeah.
I feel like you and I cannot describe a single scene in the entire second season that Memphis and the reporter were doing.
No.
Like, if asked to, I don't think you and I could come up with a single thing that happened with Memphis and that reporter in season 2.
Well, I do remember them driving in the car at one point, and she doesn't want to believe anything.
Well, no, that wasn't even the reporter. That was her
that
was with the conspiracy theorist who everybody thought was dead, and then Josh Stewart case.
Yeah.
But you're right. The one scene is when the guy's just talking about conspiracy theories and yelling about Atlas.
And she gets mad at him and says it's not true, and why is he doing this?
And then he runs off. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's about the only scene
literally, she had, I'm sure, 2 hours of scenes in that season of television, and we can talk about 1 3-minute scene.
It wasn't even 3 minutes. I don't think.
If 3 minutes, right?
Yeah, if 3 minutes.
3 minutes. This is my point. Like, it's crazy. All right.
That's that. We don't need
That's
to talk
that.
about this
We're gonna
anymore.
go. We're gonna go. We can be done with the show. We'll make ourselves feel better by watching a couple of Josh Stewart movies for the show in the future. Whatever show we're gonna watch next, between seasons, we'll tell you. I'll finally get her to watch The Collector and The Collection, and we can talk about how magic Josh Stewart is in those movies. I mean, it's not unreasonable to say that this is basically a Josh Stewart fan podcast at this point. It wasn't until they killed him off on Criminal Minds.
Yes.
And we had an excuse to just watch episodes of TV with Josh Stewart on it from time to time. But now that they've killed him off on Criminal Minds, we actually have to admit that this whole time we just wanted to talk about Josh Stewart. And we were using Criminal Minds
Well, that's not
as a venue
true.
to do that. But now we have to open up and just find other excuses to talk about Josh Stewart.
Understand this, guy. I mean, this is tongue-in-cheek stuff. I mean,
I know. All right. So that's that. We're going to be back here
Yes,
next
it
week
is.
with the movie Shooter.
Oh,
So
God.
watch that. It's on Prime. You can watch it right now. I mean, I'm sure it'll still be on Prime by the time you hear this. It's not like it's going anywhere. The movie Shooter, which is basically the first season of the movie Shooter, except it's not afraid to be political.
So there.
Like, that's the thing. What if the show Shooter wasn't terrified of politics? That's what you want to get. And can I just say something, one last thing before we go?
Okay.
Isn't it weird that we didn't, if they're doing all these flashbacks anyway, we didn't see the thing that Earl Swagger won his Medal of Honor for?
Yeah, I know, eh?
It's weird that they left that out, right? Because he won a Medal of Honor for doing stuff in Vietnam, and we didn't, see it happen.
I know.
Seems like
it
seems like
very
an oversight to
strange.
me, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
There's some weird things going on in this movie that
maybe it was
I'm
a
sure.
budgetary issue. I mean, maybe it was a budgetary thing. Who knows?
yeah, but we could have missed some of the other stuff that went on in Vietnam.
Yeah, that's true. All right. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments, if there's any other Josh Stewart related shows you'd like us to watch, drop us a line. At profilingcriminalminds@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. My God. Ridiculous. I know this is ridiculous.
Yep.
If you're listening on an app or podcatcher, please be sure to rate and review it. That's how people find out about the show. We'll see you back here next week for Shooter, but until then, I'll say that's right. Au revoir.
And have a good week.